Hello everyone, my name is Olivia and let's chat about my 2024 reading year. Grab a cozy drink, sit back, because I'm going to talk about everything about my reading year, the highs, the lows, and everything in between in this really fun tag. And I'm very excited to chat about my reading year because I feel like I've done a lot of reading vlogs throughout the year, but I haven't sat down and talked about the books that I've been reading in 2024 in like an individual sit down video. So this is going to be really fun, and it was inspired by Allison Pages, whose channel I loved, and I really hope that she's able to come back to BookTube eventually because I really do miss her videos. So let's get right into it. I wrote down all the questions on my trusty iPad. So the first question in this tag asks, how many books did you read? Right now, when I'm filming this video, I have read 57 books in 2024. I'm currently reading 2 books right now, so I'm reading White Nights by Dostoevsky, and I'm also listening to a memoir on audiobook. I'm 25% through that memoir, so I'm hoping I can finish it by the end of December. And White Nights, I truly believe I can finish it today because I'm already halfway through. So if we add those two, I will have read 59 books in 2024, which is so unsatisfying to say because why couldn't I squeeze in one more book to read 60 books? But I just think I won't have the time, I won't have the ability to. I know I love an even number, but that's just the way that goes. The next question is, did you reach your goal? Well, I guess if the goal is loving even numbers, I did not reach that goal because I would love to hit 60 books read this year, but I don't actually set reading goals anymore. I think my only goal this year was to read more nonfiction, which I did, and I don't really set numerical goals anymore because it makes reading a little bit less enjoyable for me, and I just want to treat this like a hobby, a passion, something that I really love. And when I make it a numbers game, the fun kind of gets sucked out. Just like how I said, being able to squeeze in one more book to hit 60 books is possible, but do I really need to do that? Not really. I wish I'd read more this year. I feel like I definitely could have read more books this year, but this is one of the toughest years of my entire life. I feel like that is reflected in my reading numbers. I'm disappointed in the fact that I kind of like let my depression win and I was doom scrolling all year rather than reading novels and writing and going into my hobbies that can bring me joy. But there's always next year. We don't always have the best years of our life. I am a little bit disappointed that I didn't read more, but I don't know what that number would be because I don't set numerical goals like that anymore. The next question is, what is your most read genre? And Goodreads actually came out with like a Goodreads Wrapped this year, which was really cool, and it showed me my most read genres, and it said literary fiction, nonfiction, and romance, which I think is very on brand for me. I think those are always the genres that I reach more towards. Also, please look at my cute New York inspired cardigan. I will link it down below. I'm obsessed with it. I think it's the cutest thing ever, and I got it for myself for Christmas, and I'm filming this the day after Christmas, and I'm just like really jazzed that I finally get to wear it because it is so cute, so cozy. I'm really happy with this purchase. So the next question is, what is the longest book you've read this year and what is the shortest book you've read this year? So Goodreads also told me that information, thankfully. So they told me that the longest book that I read this year was Fire and Blood by George R. R. Martin. This is the historical fictional textbook of the Targaryens, which has inspired House of the Dragon, which I am obsessed with. House of the Dragon is one of my favorite shows of all time. I think it's so much better than Game of Thrones. I think it's so much more compelling. I think the storyline is so fantastic, so dark, and because I am so tired of waiting 2 years for a new season, I decided to spoil the entire thing for myself by listening to Fire and Blood by George R. R. Martin on audiobook, and that was a really long audiobook. So I know the ending for every single character in House of the Dragon. It's a very dark story. It's going to get even darker in future seasons, and I'm just really happy that I know where this story is leading to because I simply could not wait and sit in this limbo of not knowing what's going to happen to Rhaenyra Targaryen, to Daemon Targaryen. I needed to know what was going to happen next, and that is a very long audiobook, and I'm very happy that I was finally able to finish it. As for the shortest book that I I read The Man with All the Luck. This is a play by Arthur Miller about a man who is so incredibly lucky and everyone around him is going through hardships, and he feels so incredibly guilty that he is the man with all the luck. This isn't my favorite Arthur Miller play. I'm a really big Arthur Miller girl for some reason. I love plays, and I think in previous years you've seen me read a lot of plays because it's just an area of storytelling that I really enjoy. I got really deep into Arthur Miller. I really enjoy his writing. I love his exploration of the fact that the American dream never existed. I love his explorations of father-son relationships, a broken family, a broken household. I think that those themes are prevalent in all of his stories. So The Man with All the Luck does explore that, but I think that there are so many stronger stories from Arthur Miller. I think The Crucible is amazing. I think All My Sons is amazing. I think Death of a Salesman is amazing. This is just a play that I decided to listen to because if you try and find plays on audiobook, they're usually plays that are actually acted out on the stage. So they record that performance and put it as an audiobook. So a lot of the Arthur Miller plays that I have listened to, I just have listened to an actual play that was performed, and it's fantastic. The performances are fantastic. There's so much emotion and heart into the story, and that's my favorite way to consume a play. I think it's really fun, and that's my shortest thing that I read in 2024. The next question is, what is a book that lived up to the hype? So I have two books to show you. One is The 7-Year Slip, and the other is Normal People. So let's talk about Normal People because I have become a certified Sally Rooney girly in 2024. 2024 is a fantastic year for me despite the fact that I didn't read a lot of books. I think the quality is fantastic. I read a lot of new favorite books. I discovered a new favorite author in Sally Rooney, and I really took my time with the books that I read, and Sally Rooney really stole my heart with Normal People, which was my first book that I read by her. It was recommended to me by a bookseller on my birthday, and she told me that I would fall in love with it. This was my first ever bookseller recommendation, and I decided to get it as a birthday gift, and I read it and fell in love with Sally Rooney's writing. I think that this is a very hyped book. I think you either love it or you hate it. You either love Sally Rooney's writing style and her characters, or you dislike her writing style and her characters. I just love Sally Rooney's writing, and this is a book that really lived up to the hype for me, and I think it deserves all the attention that it gets. As for The 7-Year Slip, I continually saw this on Bookstagram and Book Talk. So many people called this their favorite romance of the year, and I tried to buy it multiple times in like 5 different bookstores when I was on a road trip, and it was always sold out. So that told me something, that this book is really worth the hype. So many people are buying it. There's a reason why it's sold out. So I picked it up and I fell absolutely in love with it. I actually have a reading vlog kind of chronicling my entire journey reading this book. So you can see that, and I'll be sure to link it down below if you want to learn a little bit more of my thoughts. But this really connected with me because I lost my aunt this year, and a central aspect of this story is a woman losing her aunt and moving on with that grief. And I think that this story just kind of fell into my life at the perfect time. I think this provided a relatability that I truly needed, and that's what I love about media, whether it's a book, a TV show, a song, or a movie. I think when you connect with an emotion that is explored in a piece of media, it can help you with whatever you're going through. And this just happened to be a book that came into my life at the right time, and it is most definitely worth the hype. The next question is, what is a book that did not live up to the hype? I have 3 books here, and they are all romance books. One is Radiance, the other is Once Upon a Broken Heart, and the third one is Bride by Ali Hazelwood. I think all of these romances are just not my cup of tea. Radiance just felt very lackluster to me. It's been recommended for years upon years. It's one of the early romantasy books that I've been continually recommended since like high school, and I finally got around to reading it, and I just wasn't impressed by it. I wasn't impressed by the 2 love interests. I didn't feel like they had any true chemistry, and I just wasn't really rooting for them, nor did I care about the fantasy world that they were in. Once Upon a Broken Heart, I enjoyed the first book, and then I read the second book, and I felt like Stephanie Garber was just recycling the plot over and over and over again, where the main character trusts the love interest, then he betrays her, then she's mad at him, then she runs away, then she gets attacked, then he comes out of nowhere, saves her, and she trusts him again, then she doesn't trust him again, and the story continues. It felt so recycled, it felt so predictable. It didn't feel like there was an actual journey that was happening within the story, which is the central part of a story. There is a journey in every story. It felt so empty, it felt so lackluster, it felt so dry and trite and recycled, and I just was not a fan of it, so I never read the third book in the trilogy. And for Bride by Ali Hazelwood, I always say in my reviews of it on this channel that Bride feels so made up, and I know that every story is made up, but Bride felt so made up in a way that feels like AI. I'm not saying that Ali Hazelwood used AI to make Bride, but it felt like such a generic, kind of boring fantasy world where there's vampires and werewolves and they don't like each other and they have these set of rules and they have these terms, but all the terms feel so deeply unoriginal and just so made up, and everything feels so forced because Ali Hazelwood is a contemporary writer who just kind of dipped her toes into paranormal romance, and you can tell that this is her first foray into paranormal romance because the world felt so muddled and it felt so uninteresting, and I was like, what are we doing here? The next question is, what is a book that felt like the biggest accomplishment? So I have two gigantic books that I'm so proud that I finished besides Fire and Blood, because that was also a really long audiobook. One is The Road to Jonestown, Jim Jones and the People's Temple by Jeff Gwynne, and the other is The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers by J.R.R. Tolkien. The Road to Jonestown I decided to listen to on audiobook. It is an 18-hour long audiobook, and I was just really curious about Jim Jones because I didn't know anything about him besides the "don't drink the Kool-Aid" meme that has come about, which is actually false. They did not drink Kool-Aid, they drank Flavor Aid, and that's just an error that the media ran with, and it just became this cultural phenomenon that everyone quotes, but it's just like misquoted because they did not drink Kool-Aid at all. I decided to listen to this because, again, I didn't know anything about Jim Jones and I wanted to learn more about him because he's a pretty interesting person in history in terms of how horrible he is. And the audiobook goes from his early childhood all the way up to the Jonestown Massacre. This is a very dark nonfiction to pick up because the crimes that this man committed are absolutely heinous. And I just think that overall this nonfiction is really impressive. And it was also very impressive for me to finish an 18-hour audiobook about a very horrible man in history who deserved everything that he got. I believe The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers is a 20-hour audiobook, but it truly did not feel like that. It felt like such a wonderful journey that I went upon with Andy Serkis, who voiced the characters like each of the actors in the Lord of the Rings movies. So he perfectly recreates the voice of Pippin, of Gandalf, of Sam. You know what I'm talking about. It is one of the most immersive, exciting audiobooks that I have ever listened to, and it also is a feat for me because one, it's a 20-hour audiobook, and two, I don't read fantasy a lot, and I was reading the book alongside Andy Serkis narrating the story, and it was one of the most enjoyable experiences ever. I filmed an entire reading vlog about it, and that will be out in January, and I'm just so happy that I decided to read Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers after putting it off for months upon months, and I just had such an enjoyable time with it. Speaking of the Lord of the Rings, the next question is, what is your favorite character of 2024? And it has to be Frodo Baggins. Frodo Baggins is such an interesting character because he's not the chosen one, and I think Tolkien really drove that home, that Frodo is a very ordinary hobbit who happened to take upon this very heavy load by bringing the One Ring to Mordor. He decided to put that upon himself in order to save the world around him, and he's just a very ordinary person. I always wonder how the ring is influencing his mind. We don't necessarily dive deep into his psyche in the story, and I always wondered what it is like to carry the ring for 10 minutes. What is it like to carry the ring from the Shire to Mordor? And I think that Frodo is one of my favorite characters of all time because he's so kind, and he maintains a level of kindness throughout the whole entire series. He's a normal character that reminds you that normal people can do big things, and I think that's what I love the most about Frodo. And I don't think it is basic to say that. I think that Frodo deserves all his flowers. The next question is, who is your least favorite character? And my least favorite character is Peter from Intermezzo. He is the older brother of the situation, so we have Ivan and we have Peter. We have Ivan, who is a chess prodigy, and we have Peter, who is the older brother. I believe he's a lawyer, and he has a very young girlfriend and then a woman that he has always had feelings for, but he doesn't necessarily commit to ever. And I really dislike Peter because I think he's just such a horrible man. I think he's a horrible man who got his cake and ate it too, and I don't enjoy anything that he stands for. In Intermezzo, every time I was in his point of view, I was dragging my feet because I did not enjoy his perspective, the way that it was written. It was short, it was choppy, it was very blunt sentences compared to Ivan, who kind of meandered and he was very introspective. Meanwhile, Peter was very straight to the point. He was a very difficult character to be in the mind of. The entire time I was reading Intermezzo, I did not enjoy him. He was my least favorite character of 2024. What is the most shocking moment that you've read any book in 2024? And I have to say that the ending of The Road to Jonestown really shocked me. I was listening to the narrator kind of go through the timeline of the Jonestown massacre. It is one of the most heinous things that I've listened to in a nonfiction, and it was just so shocking to listen to that I actually had to stop the audiobook to just kind of regroup, because the descriptions that were included in the story were absolutely horrifying, and it was just a moment that I don't want to relive. The next question is, what is the best written book that you've read this year? And I have to say, Beautiful World, Where Are You by Sally Rooney. This is my favorite book by Sally Rooney. This book made me so happy to be alive. I think this is Sally Rooney's most positive story that she's ever written. I think it's a love story towards lockdown, the human connection, and just finding yourself as an adult. And just like The 7-Year Slip, I think that Beautiful World, Where Are You found me at the right time, and it gave me all these messages that I needed to hear, and I'm really grateful for it. And there are so many beautiful quotes in this story. Let me just read you a random quote that I just turned to. It says, "I should put my energy into living and being happy. When I try and picture for myself what a happy life might look like, the picture hasn't changed very much since I was a child. A house with flowers and trees around it, and a river nearby, and a room full of books, and someone there to love me. That's all." I love this story. I think it is so beautiful. It's definitely a story that I can see myself rereading over and over again and returning back to. The next question asks, which books did you push the most people to read this year? And I do have to say, they're probably the Sally Rooney books. I think I've actually made a reading vlog for every single Sally Rooney book, and I cannot stop talking about her stories. I think that they're all very unique. They all offer something different to a reader, and I think that they're all worth your time. I forgot to grab some books off of a shelf. Hold please. I have a lav now, so now you can hear me when I'm not even near the camera, which is really exciting. So the next question is, what is the book with the best cover? And I have two books to show you. One I do own physically and one I want to have a copy of eventually to add to my collection. And the first one is Lady Macbeth. I truly think this is one of the prettiest book covers I have ever seen in my entire life. I think the utilization of a painting with this neon text is absolutely gorgeous. I love the fact that paintings are becoming a little bit more mainstream in book covers, even though this isn't necessarily a famous painting like other books like Cursed Bread and My Year of Rest and Relaxation. And then I also love the cover of Thirst. This is similar in the vein of Lady Macbeth, where we have a neon color and then we have a classic piece of art that I think is absolutely beautiful. What is a book that made you cry the most? I sobbed because it was so beautiful, and this one also, like Beautiful Beautiful World, Where Are You made me just love life and appreciate life so much more than I already did, and it is Miracle in the Andes by Nando Parrado. Nando Parrado is one of the survivors of the Andes plane crash. If you've seen Society of the Snow on Netflix, that is what this entire story is about. And what makes this nonfiction interesting in particular is that I believe that every single survivor has written a story about their perspective living in these conditions for 72 days. But Nando is particularly interesting because he's one of the 2 rugby players who climbed the Andes Mountains to try and find help and eventually find people who helped rescue the entire team. I truly think if you are feeling lost in life and you want to appreciate the gift of existence, you should read Beautiful World, Where Are You? And also this book, because the way that Nando views not only existing, but also the things that he had to go through in life to survive is from such a place of appreciation that it kind of leaves you in awe. This memoir is one of my favorite memoirs of all time. I'm so thankful to Nando for sharing his story. He makes me want to live a better life. The next question is, what is a book that made you laugh the most? And I have to say, Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers. I think the parts that made me laugh the most were the interactions between Gollum and Sam, and I think that their banter is so witty and entertaining, even in Tolkien's book. In the movie, I really do enjoy their banter and the way that they are very sassy to one another because they don't respect one another, but I also was very surprised to see that same energy emulated in the actual original text. I think that Tolkien is very witty. He's both a beautiful writer in the way that he describes scenery and the way that he describes this entire world, but the dialogue is also very humorous and light, and he has these light moments that make me laugh out loud. The next question is, what is the best nonfiction of the year? And I have to say these two. These two are the best nonfictions that I have read this year. Miracle in the Andes made me appreciate life. This is my first ever biography, and I think it is so incredibly readable. It's so immersive, and I just noticed that the back of the book says, "This book tells Jim Jones' story better than anything I have read to date." And that's said by Jim Jones Jr. Need I say anything else? Pick this up if you're even remotely interested in Jim Jones, and if you're interested in the concept of a leader who rises to power by being incredibly nonsensical and contradictory. And the last question for this reading survey is, what is the best reread of the year? I don't reread often, but I did reread one book this year, and it was If We Were Villains by Emma Rio. I decided to reread this because I wanted to do a reading vlog centered around books inspired by Shakespearean plays. This is a dark academia that I really loved, and I wanted to reread because I had read a lot more Shakespeare in between the first time I read it and this time around, and I had a great time with it. I really love this dark academia. I think it's definitely worth your time. That is my 2024 reading survey. I feel like I have been yapping for over an hour now, and I'm so excited to eventually film my favorite reads of 2024. I believe it will come out a week after this one, and yes, I will also have a favorite movies of 2024 video coming as well in January. I hope you all had a great reading year. I would love to know your top 5 favorite books of 2024, and be sure to leave the genre as well so I can see which ones I should add to my TBR. If you want to follow me anywhere else on social media, all my links will be down below because I post a lot on Instagram, on TikTok, on Threads, and there's a lot more content that you won't see here. Thank you so much for watching, and if you have not subscribed so already, be sure to do so to see more videos from me in the future, especially my favorite books of 2024 video, and I will see you in another video very soon. Bye!